All right, welcome everyone. As we have people continue to join us, I'll get us started with a few housekeeping items in just one second. But before we get on our way, I would like to say a special welcome and thank you to the members of staff from Senator Murkowski, Senator Sullivan, and Representative Beggich's offices joining us for today's webinar as we talk about their home states, Alaska Railroad. As you get situated for the webinar today, just some reminders. There are two ways to listen in. You can either join with your computer audio or select dial in the audio pane and join by phone. We do have some time set aside for Q&A at the end of today's webinar, and you can submit a question at any time in the Q&A tab on the control panel, and we'll answer as many of those as we can before we wrap up. And lastly, this session will be recorded and available on the LRW website afterwards. We do have a code of conduct. LRW expects all participants at in-person or online events to behave in a way that fosters a safe and welcome environment for everyone involved. If you experience anything to the contrary, please email webinars@railwaywomen.org. And as always, a big thank you to our corporate partners. Their membership and activity is the backbone of educational events like today's webinar, our symposium that we held last week, our scholarships, networking events, and more. Partnering with LRW gives organizations access to a tremendous pool of talented women and men, and for recruiting opportunities, networking, professional development, and more. If you see your company's name up there and you didn't know you were a corporate partner, or if you're interested in becoming a corporate partner, you can visit railwaywomen.org /corporate partnerships. And on to our speakers, what you're really here for today. I'm going to do a quick introduction and I'm going to turn it over to these wonderful women to provide a little bit more information about themselves. Joining us today, we have Christy Terry, Vice President of Real Estate at the Alaska Railroad Corporation, and Kristen Graytrix, Manager of Real Estate Contracts at Alaska Railroad Corporation as well. So ladies, I will turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Great. So hello all, my name is Christy Terry and I am the Vice President of Real Estate for the Alaska Railroad Corporation. This is my 15th year at the Alaska Railroad and I've served a number of positions including Port Manager and Director of External Affairs. And previous to the Alaska Railroad, I worked in local government and even served in elected positions on council and as mayor for the city of Seward, Alaska. So both Kristen and myself are very excited to be here. Honestly, the railroad is my favorite thing to talk about, to provide you with a general overall understanding of who we are, what we do here, and just our general operations running a 100-plus-year-old railroad in the far north. So Kristen is our real estate manager of contracts and has worked at the railroad for the last 10 years. And before that, specialized in aviation-related property management and federal contracts with the state of Alaska. She'll take over and provide a deeper dive into the real estate department, for which we are both part of. So I almost took this slide out because all of us in this industry already know how important it is to stay off the tracks, but I left it in so that you can see some of the items that we do encounter, from hunters to bikers, to even quinceanera and graduation pictures. The iconic nature of our Alaska Railroad is enticing to residents and visitors alike. So we do bisect South Central Alaska into the interior, and to keep people safe but provide accessibility, we let people know if they have to cross to first use a crossing, or in the backcountry, always expect a train, stop, look both ways, listen, then quickly cross the tracks when safe. I thought I'd also include, for you lower 48 folks, on this slide, a picture of one of the items that we deal with as part of our safety culture, and that's avalanches. So we have a robust avalanche control and mitigation program. And what you see here in this picture are one of the challenging conditions we deal with in the last frontier. And this picture was from 2023 along Turnagain Arm. Sorry, there's a little lag to the slide change. So what will I present today? Just quickly, I'll go over our mission and strategic goals, the history, public engagement, operations and financial performance, touch on our capital investment and grants program, the economic process that we have with projects, and then also leave time for questions. So you can see our mission statement here. I just want to highlight the second part of this mission statement that talks about economical transportation and real estate services that support and grow economic development opportunities for the state of Alaska. It's just foundational to everything we do here at the railroad. And then growing from that mission statement, we have our 5-year strategic goals and our annual strategic goals. You can see we always lead with a culture of safety and excellence. We very much value and work towards enhancing our stewardship for the state and our stakeholder relations. We grow revenue by sustaining and expanding business opportunities. We improve profitability through operational and administration efficiencies. We optimize our capital program with investment and management, and we enhance the economic growth through rail and real estate development for the state of Alaska. So some quick facts about who we are, which is what we're here to talk about today. You can see that we're a corporation owned by a state. So the state is our one and only stakeholder or shareholder, built by the federal government from 1914 to 1923 in order to open up the Alaska Territory to development. The state of Alaska later purchased the railroad in 1985 for $22.3 million, which was quite a deal. Managed now by a 7-member board of directors appointed directly by the governor. We are mandated to be self-sustaining, responsible for financial and legal obligations. And fun fact, our current president and CEO, Bill O'Leary, is the first born and raised Alaskan in that position. So you can see here our stats. We have 683 total miles of track, and that's our main line right away, industry track, yard track, over 1,000 freight cars owned and leased. You can see our passenger cars, 55 locomotives, and annually we move at least 500,000 passengers and 3.7 million tons of freight. And that freight number is from 2024. We're quite a large corporation for the state with 590 full-time year-round employees, 184 seasonal. So we really ramp up in the summer for those operations. Very proud that 91% of our hires are Alaskan residents, and even more proud that 15% of our workforce is registered veteran status. And we are a combination of union and non-represented employees. So what have we done with our first 100 years? So in 1914, Congress empowered President Woodrow Wilson to locate, construct, and operate a railroad in Alaska. So up to this time, there were a number of private railroads that many had already failed and just very localized. So moving off those privately held railroads, in 1915, the federal government purchased the Northern Railway. 1917, they purchased Tanana Valley Railroad, and then started a massive project to also reconstruct new rail. And in 1923, President Harding drove the Golden Spike when the northern and southern ends of the railroad joined in Nenana. So our railroad links Tidewater in places such as Seward and Whittier into the interior, past Nenana, up to Fairbanks, onto North Pole. And the estimated cost of construction at that time was $35 million. So, a picture's worth 1,000 years. So I wanted 1,000 words. So I wanted to provide some more pictures through the years. To the top right, you see our Governor Bill Sheffield holding a ceremonial check for when the railroad was purchased by the state from the feds. And after leaving the position of governor, Mr. Sheffield served as chairman of the board of directors from the Alaska Railroad from 1985 to 1997. In 1997, he was promoted to president and CEO of the railroad, where he served until 2001. He later became again, beginning in 2018, he was back on the railroad board as our vice chairman. So below that picture is our Hurricane Gulch Bridge, which you'll see here a picture of construction in 1921. The first steel was erected in June of that year, which then the first passenger train was operated in August 15 of that same year. So it was the most difficult and expansive bridge on the project at that time, and it cost equivalent to $21.2 million in 2024 with adjusted for inflation. So to build it, the company strung an aerial tram across the gulch, and construction proceeded from both sides simultaneously. And for 8 years, this was the tallest bridge in the US. And then continuing on counterclockwise, in 1941, the U.S. Army began construction of a railroad spur from Whittier to Portage. And on April 23rd of 1943, workers completed the spur, which consisted of a 1 mile tunnel through Baggage Peak, and then a 2.5 mile tunnel through Minyard Mountain. And finally, the top left, historic passenger cars, as we increased our passenger service to Denali. So, brings us to 1923 to 2023. So the Alaska Railroad celebrated our centennial with almost 1,000 people in attendance in Nenana, Alaska. So pictured here, you will see our railroad president, Bill O'Leary, the FRA administrator, the Nenana Native Association first chief, Senator Dan Sullivan, Governor Mike Dunleavy, and our Alaska Railroad Board Chair, John Shively. So since this is a League of Railway Women presentation, I wanted to highlight Nenana Native Association's first female chief, Caroline Keltzer, her personal connection to this day. And here's an excerpt from her speech. So there once was a young girl who watched from the crowd as President Warren G. Harding drove the final golden spike into the ground. And that was 100 years ago to the day my great-grandmother, Margaret John, at age 8, watched as Nenana became a gateway to Interior. So Nenana has a long, proud history of being connected to the Alaska Railroad. So springboarding from this, most recently this summer, the Alaska Railroad, the Anchorage Museum, and other partners were able to purchase the golden spike from a private individual and bring it back to Alaska. So history is very important to us. And we also recognize that connection through the years as we're over 100 years old. So engagement. You can see all the outreach we do in our Rail Belt communities. We have a dedicated external affairs director, but many of the high-level management members attend council and assembly meetings. We meet with many organizations in support of their missions. In 2024, the Alaska Railroad supported over 250 charitable, civic, and community nonprofits with well over $365,000 in event sponsorships, in-kind donations such as rail tickets, poster prints, used ties, and charter use of our Denali car. And since 1981, the Alaska Railroad has partnered with school districts to offer a vocational program to train high school students to serve as hosts onboard summer passenger trains. The Alaska Railroad also partners with Alaska's for Litter Prevention and Recycling, supporting backhaul of recyclable materials to the lower 48. So the two pictures here are from this year's annual open house, where we saw upwards of 5,000 people for equipment and static train tours and even short train rides to give back to our Anchorage community. It also gave us an opportunity to provide a fundraising for the school that we support as a business partnership. So in addition to other aspects with the school, we support a back to school night annually with Government Hill Elementary. And it's my understanding that the partnership was started years ago with help from Senator Murkowski before she was one of our state senators. So just wanted a shout out that that program is still alive and going strong. Moving into our financials. So with our corporation model, everything we have for income returns back to the corporation for our infrastructure that is critical to the state of Alaska. I just want to mention that the numbers on this slide are our unaudited numbers, and then I'll verbally update them now with the audited numbers, and later in the presentation, more of the actuals will be presented. So in 2024, the assets of the Alaska Railroad were $1.393 billion. Our operating revenue was $210 million. Our net income was $25.3 million. Critical to our operations is our three main business lines. Much like a three-legged stool, our three main lines of business support and provide diversified stability to the corporation as a whole. So our largest line at the railroad is our freight business line, which is about 45% of our revenue. Passenger is next with 21%. Grants provide 17%. Real estate department is between 14 and 15%. And then other is about 1%. So our 2024 operating ratio settled at 1.02 to reflect efficient freight and passenger operations. So under good management and sound business decisions in 2024, the revenue from Alaska's three main business lines helped push overall revenues to $253 million. So the Alaska Railroad provides freight operations between shipping points in North America to many destinations. So this is the second leg of the stool that I've been speaking of. Our port facilities in Seattle, Whittier, Seward, Anchorage provide critical links between maritime and land transportation modes. Rail yards in Seward, Whittier, Anchorage, and Fairbanks offer centralized distribution hubs for transportation. Freight is Alaska Railroad's largest revenue source, generating almost half of Alaska Railroad's operating revenues. In a typical year, the railroad hauls more than 3 million tons of freight. Some of our major freight businesses include petroleum. So products move from Anchorage to a fuel distribution center in North Pole. We have Topsy and containers on flat cars, and that moves north and south between Seward, Whittier, Anchorage, and Fairbanks. We have coal. We previously had an international coal trade. Now it's localized to the state. Gravel, we move seasonally between April and October. Aggregate products move from mines in the Matanuska, Susitna Valley to Anchorage. And construction projects around the state in 2024 increased demand for gravel as that type of cargo tonnage continues to grow. In-state local, we have other freight, includes specialty movements of very large or oddly shaped equipment, such as bridge girders, wind turbine blades and components, as well as in-state shipments of cement, scrap metal, cargo, military equipment, and you can see some of that here, and pipe. And finally, our largest freight service is the barge interline service. Alaska Rail Marine arm moves rail shipments to and from Alaska via Seattle. I bet you didn't know that we were connected to the lower 48, interchanging with railroads in the lower 48 and beyond. And let's see if this works. And maybe if someone could let me know if the sound does not work.
We have so many resources, some of them discovered, many of them I think still undiscovered. I mean, with oil, gas, all sorts of minerals, timber, fish. I mean, we're just a major, major potential resource basket for the U.S. and for the world.
A lot of folks don't even know the railroad exists or what we move, both people and freight. We haul a number of bulk commodities that are critical to the mining industry, and without that connection, the state of Alaska would suffer economic woes.
The biggest issue facing Alaska is how do you move these resources? That's something that I think the Alaska Railroad fits into coming up with that solution, or certainly one of the solutions for that. So we move, tremendous quantities of, natural resources. I mean, we move coal, we move gravel, we move construction materials to help support different resource industries out there. We have tremendous amount of oil field supplies that we move, and we're an absolutely key piece of the logistics in this state.
So the barge arrives typically in the summer months on schedule, Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning. And first thing that happens is that we have to pull the rail cars off. So there's somewhere between 40 and 50 rail cars, depending on the week. And we need to strip those off immediately. Then our marine carrier can go to work with their forklifts and pull off their cargo in the racks. Once they're complete with the offload, they need to backload the racks with containers. And then the final piece is to put the empty rail cars that we brought down to Whittier with us onto the rail barge. So it's a 12 to 14 hour process. Obviously, the shorter the better, because it improves the turn time of that operation and gets us back to Seattle quicker so we can get ready to come back north again.
This state needs this railroad. And it needs this railroad because without this railroad, it's going to be very difficult for the state to move forward with any kind of larger project. Any major project that occurs in South Central or occurs in interior Alaska or even up on the Western Alaska or up on the North Slope, it'll be surprising if it doesn't involve the Alaska Railroad at some point.
The main thing with railroading is that you can move a large quantity of freight with less resources. The Alaska Railroad can move 1 ton of freight nearly 500 miles on 1 gallon of fuel.
I'm excited about the future for Alaska. I'm excited about the future for the Alaska Railroad. Alaska, I think, is almost limitless potential. And to realize that potential, transportation and logistics are going to absolutely be key.
When you look at the next 100 years for the Alaska Railroad, I mean, you can see all sorts of things that could happen. So there's growth to be had there. And I would hope at some point there's something that comes along that's economic that allows the railroad to expand to other parts of the state.
Well, great. Thanks, everyone. And then I want to just end the freight portion of this so you can see these are the types of freight by volume compared to the last 10 years. And early on in 2015 and 16, you can see those very small portions growing smaller that was our export coal. So we were sad to see that go just due to transportation costs, but you can see the in-state trade with coal remains. On to our next business line, which is passenger services. We operate year-round, regularly scheduled passenger rail service. We partner with local tour operators, hotels, excursion vendors to bring passengers into these communities and provide access to public lands. And we connect thousands of visitors between the Anchorage Airport Depot and our cruise ports. And I'll talk about more about this later, but we believe we operate the nation's last flag stop train service as a vital service to Alaskans living off the grid. So those online later will have to correct me if they also do so. And we keep an estimated of 8,000 plus business buses off the Alaska Highway each summer, which is a great benefit to residents and visitors alike for safety. So again, I did hear that there's a flag stop service in Canada, but we believe that our Hurricane train route is one of the last true flag stop trains on the United States, helping both residents and visitors who have no other access to the train, pursuing unique backcountry experiences and getting access to their residents. Another exciting aspect of our passenger service is developed in partnership with the Chugach National Forest Service. The Spencer Glacier Whistle Stop is a remote wilderness area that is only accessible by train. It is also home to one of the most spectacular and visible glaciers along the rail belt, Spencer Glacier, that you can see here, a massive wall of ice cascading down the mountains into Spencer Lake. And passengers at this whistle stop are free to get off, explore on their own, or take advantage of a variety of guided excursions offered here before catching the train back to civilization. And so I thought you might like to see, these are pictures of Kristen and I and another railroader enjoying Spencer Glacier on one of our days off. We hiked up to the public use cabin to overnight, which is not for the faint of heart, then paddleboarded in Spencer Lake amid icebergs, and then hiked all around the area, including this pedestrian bridge. So you can see there's so many recreational opportunities at the Spencer Glacier Whistle Stop.
Christy, maybe before we continue, can I just ask you a question? We have something come up in the Q&A. Can you just maybe explain flag stop for those who don't know what that means?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So the true meaning of it is you have, which you can't see me, but I'm waving my hand, like you have a white handkerchief and you wave the train down, or you schedule ahead of time on the train to also depart at a certain location. So, you know, folks that live in their cabins all summer that have no other way to access in and out, you know, they might bring goods, they might bring their stove or their heater or their, you know, groceries using the train. And then to get back on, they'll stand by the tracks and just wave the train down, and the train will stop to allow them to board. Great. Okay, I'll move on. Passenger operations, you can see here our growth in passenger numbers over the years with the major impacts COVID had to our operations. The railroad's passenger business saw a slight decline last year as compared to 2023, but we were still well over 500,000 passengers aboard the railroad and our contract coaches. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen to provide additional details on our real estate department and how we utilize our land base to build infrastructure and transportation services, act as a corridor and opportunity for development, and to generate internal income. Kristen?
Thank you. Shown on the screen is a map depicting the Alaska Railroad corridor. The right-of-way is a total of about 550 miles long and encompasses nearly 14,000 of the roughly 36,000 acres owned by the Alaska Railroad. Highlighting the history of the corporation holding title to all Alaska Railroad land, which was transferred by the federal government. The Act of 1914, which is where the U.S. legislation authorized the construction and operation of a railroad in Alaska. In 1983, the Alaska Railroad Transfer Act transferred ownership of the Alaska Railroad from federal to state government. The Alaska Railroad Corporation Act established the Alaska Railroad to be a public corporation authorized to own and operate the Alaska Railroad. The transfer of the entire federal interest was complete January of 1985. The rights conveyed to the Alaska Railroad in the right-of-way include an exclusive use of a 200-foot wide corridor. The Alaska Railroad's property rights in its right-of-way was recently confirmed by the U.S. District Court and then reaffirmed by the Ninth Circuit. I wanted to provide the definition of an exclusive use easement that the Alaska Railroad Transfer Act required to be conveyed to the railroad and which is expressly incorporated to all of Alaska Railroad's federal patents. An exclusive use easement means an easement which affords to the easement holder the following: the exclusive right to use, possess, and enjoy the surface of the surface estate of the easement as necessary for the transportation, communication, and transmission purposes and associated support functions for which surface of such lands are issued. Subadjacent lateral support of the land subject to the easement, and the right, in the easement holder's discretion, to fence all or part of the lands to this easement and affix track, fixtures, structures, and such lands, and to exclude other persons from all or part of such lands. As you can imagine, having a 200-foot wide right-of-way, we have numerous permitted uses, mostly utilities, roadways, and crossings. At this time, roughly 500 of our 850 active permits are within the right-of-way corridor. The railroad has about a dozen corridor permits, which are significant longitudinal uses of our right-of-way. Our most substantial is a fiber which starts in Whittier and runs north to Eielson Air Force Base. This spans about 450 miles. Other permitted uses of the right-of-way include cell phone towers, trails, land use, track use, and transloading agreements. In recent years, the Alaska Railroad has developed a right-of-way department to process all new uses of the right-of-way. These permits are still reviewed, approved, and administered by the Real Estate Department. In 2021, an appraisal of the Alaska Railroad was completed. This appraisal valued the right-of-way at just over $320 million. The enhancement factor, which recognizes the benefit of a corridor, enhances this value to $480 million. The appraiser estimated that it would now take over 6 times this amount to reconstruct the corridor, if not more. Next slide. Real estate opportunities help fulfill our statutory mandate to develop business and remain self-sufficient. Like all revenues generated by the railroad, revenues from leasing and permitting of our land are required by both federal and state law to be retained and managed for railroad purposes. A few areas of exciting mixed development opportunities include Anchorage's Ship Creek, which is where our offices are housed. Ship Creek acts as the main hub of operations associated with both railroad passengers departing and arriving from our historic depot, as well as our industrial and commercial customers. The creek basically bisects the area. South of the creek is more focused on rail passengers. The Ship Creek area provides amenities such as pedestrian trails, gift shops, a hotel, restaurants, tackle shop for fishing in the creek, Rendezvous, which is a large winter festival attracting visitors from all over the world, hold snow sculpture competitions and firework events in the Ship Creek area every winter. Currently underway is the Slammin' Salmon Derby, which Christy can see from the window of her office. We've had fun watching anglers pull 30-pound king salmons out of the creek this last week. North of the creek, the rail yard provides seamless cargo operations between Anchorage, including the Port of Alaska, shipping points across the state. For these operations, Ship Creek area offers centralized distribution between various destinations and modes of transportation. On the top of the screen, you will see one of our newest and ongoing developments here in Ship Creek. This is the Downtown Edge at the Rail, a condominium development providing unique opportunity to supply needed residential capacity while providing a market rate of return that provides additional revenue for the railroad operations. Depicted on the bottom of the slide, just a block east of the depot, is Alaska Railroad. The Alaska Railroad renovated a historic freight shed. The freight shed is Alaska's first historic building renovation under the U.S. Green Building Council's Leadership Energy and Environmental Design Program. A large portion of the building is leased by the Federal Government Services Administration to house the U.S. Forest Service. Next slide. Here's another visual of some of our land reserves. The top left-hand is a portion of the Ship Creek area. It's really the southern portion from the creek. You can see the creek along the top. The bottom left-hand corner is the Port of Seward. Christy will talk about that more later. And then we have another more detailed map, I guess, of our route here on the right. Another area to highlight, but not shown on the slides, is a residential development along the Chena River in Fairbanks. These are residential lots available for sale, which is an unusual practice for the Alaska Railroad, as we typically like to hold on to our land. However, it was determined that this was the highest and best use of this property. The Alaska Railroad is steward to some of Alaska's most visited land. Both Whittier and Seward are home to cruise ship terminals and are often the starting or ending point to many Alaskan vacations. The Alaska Railroad traverses Alaska's larger communities, including Anchorage, the Mat-Su Borough, and Fairbanks, and popular tourist destinations such as Denali and Talkeetna. As Alaska grows, the Alaska Railroad seeks to attract the kind of developers and business partners that will continue to improve our economy, our visitor industry, and our community's quality of life. Next slide. This slide shows our Wetlands Mitigation Bank. You can see there's a little tiny red dot, and that reflects the 250 acres owned by the Alaska Railroad. And that serves anybody in this general blue area can purchase credits in this from the bank. And so this is 250 acres along the Seward Highway that was quantified into 149 wetland credits. These credits are sold to the local Department of Transportation and other developers as required by the Corps of Engineers for the development of wetlands. As a real estate person and not an environmental professional, this is a very interesting project to administer. Not depicted, but another source of real estate revenue include the royalties from gravel extraction from the Alaska Railroad's land reserves. The railroad does source its own ballast and other material for its needs. However, third parties also extract gravel in support of projects throughout the rail belt. Next slide, please. Real estate is important to fulfilling Alaska Railroad's statutory mandate to remain self-sufficient by providing a solid and dependable income. In 2024, real estate revenues provided about 14% of operating revenues, totaling roughly $32 million. In addition to the permitted uses already described, customers also have the ability to enter into land use agreements for short-term periods. These are commonly project-based use, where a contractor may require a laydown or staging for the duration of a project, or even where somebody wants to be somewhere on a longer term but is not improving the property. At this time, the Alaska Railroad has approximately 275 long-term ground leases. This is when the customers construct and operate improvements and otherwise conduct business on the leased parcels. Our logistics, construction, cement, petroleum, and oil field service lessees benefit from having rail-served lease parcels in close proximity to the railroad yard operations, enhancing efficiency and meeting their transportation needs. Next slide, please. Here we have a different visual for the breakdown of real estate revenue. Blue is permits and leases. Red is the sewer dock revenue, freight dock revenue. Green is the passenger dock revenue. You've seen the COVID years where there is no green. And then, so the green, the last couple of years include the passenger improvement fee, which Christy will provide more detail on an exciting project we have in Seward. And then purple is the revenue that real estate department captures for all that freight that comes into Whittier via the rail barge, but is moved out of Whittier by truck and not by rail. While typically a relatively small portion of all overall revenue, the impact real estate has to net income is substantial. As we all know, the overhead for maintaining trains and track is far greater than that of land. I'm handing it back to Christy.
Thanks, Kristen. That was fantastic. So now on to capital investments. So to highlight how we utilize the income discussed with our three main business types for capital investments, with a robust 5-year capital investment plan to continue to support our goals and mission statement, while also maintaining and growing railroad facilities, infrastructure, community developments, and interactions. In the next 5 years, we are planning almost $500 million with a B for much needed work. For this slide, you will see how important federal funds and competitive grants are to our ability to maintain aging infrastructure. As Kristen previously described, our real estate department revenue helps provide the critical matching funds for many of these grant opportunities. So competitive grants awarded from 2018 to 2024 and pending in 2025. Now these grants are hard to obtain, but to use an Alaskan analogy, it's like hunting or fishing. Once you squeeze the trigger or set the hook, now the hard work begins. And you can see we have a lot of work currently and more so ahead of us. So the great thing about being 100 years old is that you are one of the oldest major infrastructures in Alaska. The problem with being 100 years old is that you are one of the oldest major infrastructures in Alaska. So our 10-year bridge plan includes rehabbing 60 plus bridges, which is completed internally by our own crews. We have a bridge crew, and also by using external contractors. Our track repair program that you see here is also very aggressive. And then also on this slide, you'll see a few of our funding sources are outlined. So we also have a very extensive rolling stock need. And this year, our board approved a $9.9 million loan to purchase much needed locomotives and flat cars to move the expected increase in freight and passengers to meet our ongoing demands in our visitor tourism industry, oil and gas, and mining industries. So also key are community projects, including a Whittier master plan. Whittier is the reserve highlighted in the video that you watched today. We have been meeting with internal and external stakeholders, council and community members to identify terminal rehab projects, configure our uplands and yard track to support maintenance and ops, and determine efficiency, reliability, resiliency, and sustainability improvements to that terminal wide. So the project is nearing its end with a final master plan expected this fall. And you can see that this was funded with a grant also matched with the railroad. And it's you can see the main purposes there for the state of good repair and to also prepare for the future. So economic development, and here's where I'm really excited to talk about these projects. So Seward is another one of our port communities. You got a quick little snapshot of that from what Kristen shared. And we've had a number of projects stemming from the master plan that we completed in 2017. So there are two main projects currently underway in Seward. One is a freight dock expansion project, and you can see there that is expected at $25 million, and also a replacement to our current cruise ship terminal and cruise ship dock, which the conceptual plans are shown here. Conceptual images are shown here on this slide. So I'm going to start off with our freight dock expansion. So this is the freight dock in Seward. It helps support the economic and growth as far into the interior and then onward to the North Slope. Our federal delegation was critical in obtaining this MIRAD grant. It was delayed a number of years due to COVID, and we are now on track to finalize and start construction in 2026. So in the picture on the right, you can see frac sandbags destined for Fairbanks and onward to the North Slope. This project is estimated again at $25+ million. 80% is funded by a MIRAD grant. 20% by the Alaska Railroad with also in-kind gravel from the city of Seward. Full build out is extending to 1,000 feet and widening 30 feet. The initial build out you can see here in more of the beige color. And it also has a component to improve the upland transportation corridor by moving a road through our yard directly out to the highway for some industrial separation from the community. It's to accommodate cargo growth, promote key industries, and to serve additional rural communities. So the Seward Passenger Dock project. On the bottom left corner is our current Seward Passenger Dock, and you can see the terminal itself is built on the dock. It was originally constructed as a freight dock right after the Good Friday earthquake in 1964, completed in 1966. And much of the Alaska pipeline that you've heard of came over this dock as a freight dock. So it's at the end of its useful life, which means we are monitoring closely and consistently assessing the condition of the dock as we make repairs annually to keep the dock safe for cruise ships and passengers through the end of the season. The port sees about 100 dockings per year and around 200,000 passengers. And this dock is at the very real juncture as we finalize this mega project, as it's important to the railroad, the state of Alaska, cruise companies, the Seward community. It's a critical gateway for flow of visitors statewide, benefiting thousands of Alaska businesses that rely on travel and tourism dollars. And just to help understand how much support it has, the project was supported in 2022 by legislation allowing the Alaska Railroad to issue $60 million worth of grant, in this session an additional $75 million. So bond debt will be repaid by the dock users. So meaning the state does not have any obligation with the bond debt. They're fully backed with the revenue that the Alaska Railroad will generate with our anchor customer, Royal Celebrity Cruise Lines, with a secured port use agreement. And actually, construction is already underway, and we're simultaneously constructing a new terminal on the uplands while also continuing with our summer season of dockings. Another aspect of this project, thanks to our federal delegation, is a $45 million EPA shore power grant. The railroad partner with the city of Seward and the developer Seward Company, Port of Tomorrow. The developer will provide the $5 million grant match. And this shore power, where the cruise ships will plug in to power and get off of their generators while in port, will ensure environmental sustainability for this industry and also provide a great benefit to the community. And then here on this slide, you will see the floating dock infrastructure that will be the largest in Alaska. Essentially, 2 barges will provide stability for Seward as a turn port. While the developer is building the shoreside terminal this summer, as soon as the last ship departs this season, demo and installation will begin on the dock, as the offshore components being built out of state will be staged and ready to move into place. The pilings will be on site by the end of July, and the floating dock and other structures will arrive in September. Here's an overall bird's eye view of the project. Going quickly now as we get to the end, just to ensure that there's time for questions. Another large project that we're assisting and providing technical expertise and guidance is a Port McKenzie rail extension. This is 35 miles to link the Alaska Railroad mainline from the community of Houston to the port of Port McKenzie. Completed extension offers benefits to state resource development, military logistics, infrastructure resiliency. And as the project sponsor, the Mat-Su Borough secured $184 million in state appropriations between 2008 2015, with the Alaska Railroad serving as the project manager. The environmental work is complete, and much of the foundational infrastructure, track bed, and bridges is also complete. So remaining construction is estimated 3 years once funding is obtained. So as we learned from the EPA Shore Power Grant that I just noted in Seward, it is a huge benefit to help these communities by providing the partnership in developing a grant application, and the borough will then submit. And we're working closely to help them develop a CRISI grant application for this project. Another large important project on our list is the Northern Rail Extension. And you can see this has 4 phases, with the first phase completed, which was completed in 2014, a bridge over the Tanana River Road and levee near Salcha. And you can see what that looks like. There's a number of items left in the phase 2, 3, and 4 of this. With the Northern Rail cost and funding, the original cost estimate was about $1 billion. It's now estimated to be $1.7 billion. Initially, DoD was the main funding source for phase 1, providing access to their training land, and then public-private partnerships are being explored as funding options. So all these projects are so important, and we really rely on our economic development partners to help with these processes. So we work well with those partners, and that brings us to the end of our session, but I just have a few more things to wrap up with. In 2023, we turned 100 years old, and now as we move into our next 100 years, we are looking back and looking forward. By addressing challenges and identifying opportunities, the railroad will continue to be the successful operating entity it always has been. The railroad is a critical piece of infrastructure for transportation in a state woefully lacking in such infrastructure. Almost all of the large development projects in Alaska will require the railroad, and Alaska has long needed a strong railroad that remains true as we connect communities and commerce in the largest and most northern state of America. And most importantly, as part of this last slide, I wanted to highlight our 2024 annual print entitled Women on the Railroad. And we used the historic photo on some of the advertising for this session. And this artwork to the right celebrates the 9 women who worked the Cantwell Rail section from 1945 to the early 1950s, when the 714th Railway Battalion departed Cantwell in 1945 after 2 years of working in the area. It left the Alaska Railroad in dire need of workers to maintain the section's track. And artist Rihanna Sather, currently working for the Alaska Railroad as a conductor engineer, created this print based on this historic photo of the award-winning crew, and her art highlights the importance of connecting our past to our present. And many of these women have had their descendants be railroad employees, and their family remain connected to our railroad. So finally, we have a number of Alaska Railroad employees joining us on this webinar, and due to time constraints, I'm not able to introduce them, but I just want to personally thank them for all that they do here at the railroad, and just proud of their excellence of service. And I also want to end up by thanking Kristen Greatrix for her help with the presentation, and all of you for your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chrissy. Very interesting presentation. I see we have no questions yet in the Q&A, so feel free to add your questions in there. But maybe while we wait for some questions to come in, I have one if you would like to answer. See, it's really interesting how you talk about how, being in remote North Territory, you have to accomplish a lot of maintenance on your railway within a very restricted time period because of winter conditions. And that also happens to be what I would assume would be the high tourism season for you guys as well. So how do you manage that? Can you talk maybe a little bit, like how do you manage the challenge of trying to make the most of that season, but also accomplishing a lot of maintenance?
Yeah, that's a great question. And since I'm in real estate, we'll see how much trouble I can get in by answering it. But I'll do a little dancing on my feet. You know, I know these crews work during very short windows. You know, we have great people working on scheduling and managing that schedule for when trains need to run on the tracks. So between freight trains and passenger trains running on the same tracks, you know, we utilize the sidings that we have for that train traffic. But also, I know these remote crews work varying hours. You know, they're out early in the morning, late at night, the middle of the night. And, you know, we have a lot of different campgrounds and section houses. So they're close to and they move along with where the work needs to be completed. So they're able to just really take the most advantage of that window. You know, and just really a lot of planning, expertise of our staff, making sure that those ties are laid out along the rail so there's not, you know, that need to wait for equipment or materials being supplied.
Excellent. Thank you. Oh, we've got another question here. So, do you have issues with snowmobilers crossing the tracks? And how do you educate pedestrians about crossing safety and pedestrian trespass prevention?
You know what? That is a great question because the safety slide I didn't show today is we have one that's specifically geared for winter that shows not only snow machines but four-wheelers. We do have that issue. You know, it's funny. I'll share a couple things. Some of the presentations that I do in these communities, I'm very targeted about mentioning snow machiners. We do postcard distributions to snow machine dealerships, organizations, you know, and ask them to post the information saying it really is a safety issue. I know that we have our own police force at the Alaska Railroad, and they go out in snow machines to contact folks. And then there's even businesses that do, you know, guided tours. So we work closely with those businesses to make sure that they're permitted. You know, we have contact with them, we give them information. But, you know, this last year in Alaska, there wasn't a lot of snow. And so that cut down on the trespassing for the snow machiners, but then we see four-wheelers out there. So it's really, you know, it's a game of by the time you get noticed that someone's out there doing something they shouldn't do and our police force gets out there, you know, there's no one to be found. So again, it's the education with postcards. We partner with, in the summertime, we partner with baseball organization in the valley that we know there's a lot of snow machiners out there and have a lot of targeted messaging.
Excellent. Very interesting. Oh, we've got another question too. So first of all, just saying thank you, Christy and Kristen. Very interesting. There's a lot happening on the Alaska Railroad. Are these large projects put out to bid? And what does the RFP, RFQ process entail?
Yeah, that's a great question. Since we are a state corporation, we have I won't say restrictive, very strategic ways that we do have to publicly advertise everything. We have a procurement code that patterns after the state of Alaska. You know, we use various modes to get that information out. You know, using organizations posted on our website, the plans room, but we do have a robust contractor pool that we make sure are aware of all our projects.
Excellent. Doesn't seem like we have any other questions coming in. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Notes, maybe you ran out of time to add to the subject or?
You know, there's just a lot of exciting things happening at the railroad. If anyone has any other questions or, you know, is more interested about a railroad that runs both freight and passengers, you know, Kristen and I and what I had, you know, are most proud of the real estate department, which we sometimes feel like an odd animal. when we're talking to other railroads and other railroad employees. But we're just proud of our contribution and all the things that we are able to do to sustain the Alaska Railroad in the state of Alaska.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for presenting this, and I'm sure you've interested a lot of people like myself into booking a cruise or a vacation out to Alaska. See the railroad. I'm very interested now. Before we let everyone go and end the webinar, I'd just like to remind everyone again of some of our upcoming events with the League of Railway Women. So make sure you add it to your calendars. September 17th, we will be present at the ARIMA conference in Indianapolis. And yeah, I guess just thank you so much again, Christy and Kristen, for participating, and thank you to all of our participants who logged in. And just a reminder again, this webinar was recorded and will be available later on the League of Railway website as well. Thank you very much, everyone.